Okay, we talked about in this section so far, we talked about illusion and intuition, the contrast between illusion and intuition. And then we talked about the contrast between glamour and illumination, both very profound, enlightening sections of the book. And now we're going to get into the contrast between Maya and inspiration. And let's jump into this. Here we come definitely into the realm of material substance. This is essentially, and in a peculiar manner, the realm of force. Maya is predominantly for the individual, the aggregate of the forces which control his septenary force centers to the exclusion, I would emphasize, of the controlling energy of the soul. Therefore, you will see that the bulk of humanity, until a man stands upon the probationary path, are under the control of Maya. For a man succumbs to Maya when he is controlled by any other force or forces than those energies which come direct from the soul, conditioning and controlling the lesser forces of the personality as they eventually inevitably must and will. Wow. So that's pretty intense statement there. And that what I'm referring to is until a man stands upon the probationary path, humanity until this is under the control of Maya. For a man succumbs to Maya when he is controlled by any other force or forces than those energies which come direct from the soul. Wow. Okay. I mean, this makes a lot of sense. When the words, steady in the light, or the light of day. When we think of those terms in beingness and consider everything else, you can see that, there's Maya, essentially. When a man is under the control of physical, astral, and mental forces, he is convinced at the time that they are, for him, right forces. Whew, that is powerful. Again, this is so interesting. Herein lies the problem of Maya. Herein lies the ultimately blindness, right, and illusion and delusion, and a dreamlike, a dreamlike state. Such forces, however, when they control a man, determine him in a separative attitude and produce an effect which feeds and stimulates the personality and does not bring in the energy of the soul, the true individuality. All right, so ultimately, when we're feeding and stimulating the personality, and we don't bring in the energies of the soul, true individuality, this is the result. And we know, I'm not trying to go into this by any stretch of the imagination, but I will say that the perfecting of the personality is a part of the selfishness of this world and evil, essentially. And this is what That's how it's done. The perfecting of the personality is to trick us, and in this way, right? So we're seeing how these things are done. So this analysis should prove illuminating to you. It certainly does. If men and women would bring their lives under a closer scrutiny by the truer inner spiritual man, and could thus determine what combination of energies conditions their life activity, they would not continue to function as they do now, so blindly, so inadequately, and so ineffectually. If this realization right here hit everyone, I would reckon the world would change in the blink of an eye. It would have to. And it, even if that did happen or not, we're just hypothesizing here or whatever, but we know that it would be temporary and then we would fall back to sleep, but that, the facts as presented would begin to make things, would force change, essentially. It is for this reason that the study and understanding of motives is of such value and importance, for such a study determines intellectually, if properly investigated, what factor or factors inspires the daily life. This is a statement worth careful consideration. I would ask you, what is your major actuating motive? For whatever it may be, it conditions and determines your predominant life tendency. What an interesting concept. And I had just had a conversation about this yesterday, or as a matter of fact, it was the last conversation I had with anybody, and it was last night with Carla, our astrologer. And she was telling me that, when the life is focused, no matter what you're doing throughout the day, that focus remains in that direction, and it's there. It's there, and it's moving in that direction. So this seems to be exactly kind of what we're talking about here. And, energy follows thought, but can we go deeper than that, where on the larger cycle, or the larger tendency here is associated with intent and motive, the intent of the heart and our motive, and what's actuating. What is the major actuating motive? What's keeping you running? What's keeping you here and functioning and keeping us going? Is it, is it material possession, or is it a desire to help, those around you wake up, essentially? And then there's everything in the middle of that. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe there is just literally those, you're either here for selfish reasons or selfless reasons, I guess, at that point. And then there might be the middle point where we don't know. Many people, particularly the unintelligent masses, are solely inspired by desire, material possession, physical and temporary. Animal desire for the satisfaction of the animal appetites, material desire for possession and for the luxuries of existence, the longing for things, for comforts and for security, economic, social, and religious, control the majority. The man is under the influence of the densest form of Maya, and the forces of his nature are concentrated in the sacral center. Others are motivated by some form of aspiration or ambition, aspiration towards some material heaven, and most religions portray heaven in this manner, ambitions for power, desire for the satisfaction of the emotional or aesthetic appetites, and for the possession of the more subtle realities, and the longing for emotional comfort, and for mental stability and assurance that the higher desires will meet with gratification. For emotional comfort, for mental stability and assurance that the higher desires will meet with gratification. All this is Maya in its emotional form, and it is not the same thing as glamour. In the case of glamour, the forces of a man's nature are seated in the solar plexus. In the case of Maya, they are seated in the sacral center. Glamour is subtle and emotional. Maya is tangible and etheric. Now, this is very deep. And when this comes together and is synthesized, we can imagine that there's an amazing understanding to come here. I wish, we wish we could just pick this up immediately. I don't ever really anticipate picking anything up immediately anymore. I absorb. I'm just talking from my own perspective. I'm not really trying to understand these things as we go. Understandings come in a really strange, in a different kind of way. Because as I'm reading, I'm picking up things from other books that have been coming together, and the tendency and the direction that we've been studying is unfolding, but I don't anticipate understanding these things. So we'll absorb and contemplate, certainly, but I fully expect the material to be synthesized or assimilated at a later date, and probably not in the ways that we think, because these understandings end up coming, when you're doing, just very random things sometimes, right? Or it never happened. These understandings never come as we expect it. The smallest thing can trigger these understandings. So the best thing to do is to listen to these things, read this material, just absorb it, and then let it work, and let the process of invocation and evocation happen. Let the magnetics involved do their job. Let the puzzle be filled in as it should be, essentially. Such are the forces of Maya which actuate, motivate, and energize the life of the ordinary man. Under their influence, he is helpless, for they inspire all his thinking, all his aspiration and his desire, and all his activity on the physical plane. His problem is twofold: to bring all his centers under the inspiration of the soul, one, and two, to transfer or transmute the forces of the lower centers, which control the personality, into the energies of the centers above the diaphragm, which respond automatically to the inspiration of the soul. It is in this thought that the potency and the symbolic value of breathing exercises consists. The motive is soul control, And though the methods employed are, in many cases, definitely undesirable, yet the developing tendency of the life thought will prove inevitably determining and conditioning. The methods used may not save the unprepared physical body from certain evil and disastrous results, yet in the long run and in the last analysis, they may condition the future experience, probably in another life, in such a manner that the aspirant will find himself more able to function as a soul than might otherwise have been the case. Definitely in the motive and soul control, and though the methods employed definitely undesirable, that the developing tendency of the life thought. See, this is, and when we say this is deep, this is like a step back into the life. Literally, I want to say. It's a literal step back in, because now we're looking at the developing tendency of the life thought. And we're kind of going back to that motive that we were just talking about. Up here, and the predominant life tendency. So that's kind of what we're talking about here. Before I close this particular instruction upon glamour, I would like to call the attention of the group to the occult sentences which I gave to DLR prior to his leaving the group. They have a definite relation to the group work, and I would like you to give them careful consideration and study. The old commentary, in speaking of the work of those whose dharma it is to dissipate world glamour, uses the following illuminating sentences. They come and stand within the midst of whirling forms, some of beauty rare and some of horror and despair. They stand. They look not here or there, but with their faces turned towards the light, they stand. Thus, through their mind, the pure light streams to dissipate the fogs. They come and rest. They cease their outer labors, pausing to do a different work. Within their hearts is rest. They run not here and there, but constitute a point of peace and rest, that which upon the surface veils and hides the real begins to disappear, and from the heart at rest a beam of dissipating force projects, blends with the shining light, and then the mist of man's creation disappears. They come and they observe. They own the eye of vision. Likewise, they own the right direction of the needed force. They see the glamour of the world, and seeing, they note behind it all the true, the beautiful, and the real. The true, the beautiful, the real. Thus, through the eye of Buddhi comes the power to drive away the veiling, swirling glamours of that glamorous world. They stand, they rest, and they observe. Such are their lives and such the service that they render to the souls of men. I would commend these lines to your careful thought. They convey to you not only the field of your group service, but also the desired attitude of the personal life of every member of the group. And, as I read this, I don't know if this makes sense or not. I'm going to say it. This is the clearing. This is the clearing. Once the clouds are gone, you've had the sunny day. And there's a big difference between cloudy, rainy, snowy, foggy, cold days, or all those things, we could pile them up on top of each other and make a really just yucky day, what we would call a yucky day. And then consider the perfect spring morning with perfectly clear skies and your favorite temperature and birds chirping and flowers blooming. This is the difference that between the two, between what it's like in the beingness of a person who's done that work. I want to say that's how I see it right now, anyway. I would also like at this point to touch upon a factor of real importance in this work and to repeat my earlier warning. Will you remember that the effort is to free yourself from irritation or from what is called in Agni Yoga imperil? A peculiar yet satisfying word, my brothers. It is particularly essential for this group. Irritation is exceedingly prevalent these days of nervous tension, and it most definitely imperils progress and retards the steps of the disciple upon the way. It can produce dangerous group tension if present in any of you. And this induced group tension can interfere with the free play of the power and light which you are supposed to use, even when the group members remain unconscious of the emanating source. Irritation definitely generates a poison which locates itself in the region of the stomach and of the solar plexus. Irritation is a disease, if I might use that word, of the solar plexus center, and it is definitely contagious to almost an alarming extent. So my brothers, watch yourselves with care and remember that just insofar as you can live in the head and in the heart, you will end the disease of imperil and aid in the transference of the forces of the solar plexus into the heart center. Well, that's the end of that section. Let me pause this just for 1 second here. All right, I just looked, and this next section is, I want to say it's quite a bit longer. So what I'm going to do is we're going to call it here for today on this video, and I'm just going to jump into the next one. And I've said this before, I think, but I prefer. I know some people like to go by duration, but I'm thinking going by thought forms or going by a section of content, or the topic is probably best, because we can leave it at that point and come back and refer to it, and then you've got the seeds of contemplation, and we've got the whole aspect of it in one spot, and it's not too jumbled. So we're just going to try this. So we'll see you next time, and we'll get started on the next section right away. Thanks.